Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's weather briefing on the first day of meteorological spring. Had a little bit of rain yesterday. We're getting rid of the snowpack. Spring is not far away, hopefully. Anyway, I'm pleased to welcome National Weather Service meteorologist and Penn State alum, at least in part, master's degree, if I remember right, John Banghoff from NWS State College. And without further ado, John, I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Chris. Let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see that all right. Good morning, everybody. As Chris mentioned, I work at the National Weather Service where I've been for coming up on 3 years. It's sort of hard to believe that that's the case. Been in State College now for a little over, let's think about this, a little over 4 years, about 4.5 years now. Did get my master's, as Chris alluded to, working with Matt Cumjian and Dave Stenzer, and have had the pleasure of interacting with many of you over the past several years. So it's always fun to be able to come back and share some weather briefing stuff and a lot of tidbits as well. I like sharing a lot of resources, and hopefully today we'll learn something. I've been working evening shifts through the weekend, and actually last night did the entire suite of forecast grids. So it was a good tune up just to get acclimated to what is coming. And let's go ahead and dive in. So first day of meteorological spring, none too soon for me. I enjoy snow between Christmas and New Year's. And aside from that, I say, we don't really need that. Many other people maybe have different opinions about it, but I'm certainly excited for warmer weather, the chance to get outside and mow the grass and play golf and all those fun things. So just want to cast some vision for where we're headed this morning. Going to talk about a few things. First, going to start a little bit unconventional. Really have become an aficionado of the the MODIS satellite imagery, the images of the day, and have compiled over the course of the past year plenty of really cool images from Pennsylvania. So we'll talk about those. Then we'll briefly recap February and meteorological winter. I'm going to leave the real sleuthing to Steve Seaman and others who are really, really good at that kind of thing, as there's more time to process the data. Honestly, I didn't have as much time to dive into that as I would have liked. Regardless, we'll then transition into the meat of the presentation, the weather forecast briefing, which is what you all are likely here for. We'll look a little bit ahead into the misty, distant future. And then at the end, I would be remiss if I did not do a shameless self-plug. We've been developing a lot of new tools at the Weather Service and State College, so want to make you aware that all those do exist, and hopefully you can incorporate them into your day-to-day forecasts, investigation, and weather forecast information collection. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully you can see this okay. What I have pictured here, it looks like my TV screen is just darker, so it's a little bit hard to see, not showing up particularly well for me. But these MODIS Today images are come out on the reg. And what I've done basically is blown it up, overlaid a Pennsylvania outline. And I figured it'd be a good occasion to just go back through and look at the year that was. So a little under a year ago now, the dead of winter, you can see barren wasteland across much of the Commonwealth, with just a few clouds here on the ridges in the southeast. By May, we started seeing some plant growth resuming, some of those greens starting to arrive. And so we'll look forward to that here in a couple months. And then by the middle of May, wow, you can see the green up, things looking pretty nice, and certainly highlights the unique terrain that exists in central Pennsylvania. This might be one of the more compelling yet uninteresting images of this whole stretch. Wildfire smoke, it seems like it's been so long now since that was affecting Pennsylvania, but certainly it shows up really nicely here, just completely covered with wildfire smoke back in the middle of September. And then a few days later, high pressure moved its way in, and what an incredible September day it was. Plenty of sunshine, and certainly, again, can see all the terrain across the Commonwealth. By October, again, I hope the colors are showing up for you pretty well here. You can see the oranges and browns really start to light up most of the Commonwealth. Just a really compelling image. And then by November, you can see that both the plants or all the leaves have likely fallen off the trees. We're back into sort of brown dead of winter, but I thought it was interesting. It captured this one stray lake effect snowband and perhaps a swan-like area of sediment evident in Lake Erie. As we go to November 8th, I think this is maybe one of the most incredible images. Not a single cloud in the sky, plenty of dry weather there. And then I came across this one just last week and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. So you can see here, this was, I guess, taken about mid-morning. And there's these couple banks of fog. I looked it up at Williamsport IPT, and they were at about 200 foot ceilings and quarter-mile visibility for much of the day. And so pretty remarkable to see that captured on satellite. Then as we transition to winter, you can see this is sort of a classic Western Mountains snow event, where east of the Allegheny Plateau, you really don't see any snow whatsoever, but to the west, certainly it's covered. And then this one I've included because it's the best vantage point we have. We didn't get many clear days before the big storm in the middle of December, but especially as I transition, I want you to focus down here to see kind of this was the before, quote unquote, and after. I think there's just so much cool stuff to look at with this. This was the big storm in December. And then again, can't capture it particularly well, but you can certainly squint and see that in an instant. Many of you guys will likely remember Christmas Eve and Christmas Day when it warmed up a lot and rained a couple inches. You can see an incredible amount of melt. I'm just going to go back and highlight the differences again between these two. And then by January 9th, we reset. We got a full clean picture of the Commonwealth. And then by February 6th, once again, as the snow continued, we have snow across the entire area. Another beautiful, beautiful image from February 21st. And this was the peak extent of the snow. And then it was pretty fun to watch it melt away through last week. Now, unfortunately, there's not been another image that's come out for today. I was hoping I might be able to autofill it and it would come in. Unfortunately not. And it'd be pretty cloudy anyway. But in the coming days, we'll certainly be able to see that this snow extent will, by all intents and purposes, have dwindled much more significantly. And certainly as we move into the next week or so, would expect most of the snow to be gone, which we'll talk about here shortly. So thanks for rolling through that with me. I'm fascinated. If you're not, that's okay. Maybe I'm a little too passionate about that kind of thing, but it was fun to put together. All right, so now let's briefly take a little bit of time. Now that it is March 1st, we have closed out February and also closed out meteorological winter, and just kind of take a glance at what happened. So what I have here plotted, again, new data has not yet come in for either of these, but 27 out of the 28 days in February will get the job done. So across much of the Northeast on the left-hand side here, you can see the departure from normal precipitation. General story was central and eastern Pennsylvania slightly above normal, and western Pennsylvania slightly below normal. Nothing too crazy, but the temperatures I think were fairly notable for February. You can see all of the area below normal by at least a couple degrees. As we take a look at winter as a whole, doesn't look that much different in terms of normal precipitation. You can see above average in central and eastern Pennsylvania, below average in western Pennsylvania. And that's sort of a function of the storm track that we've seen that's come into play, sort of a southerly storm track with some nor'easter activity in the southeast, eastern part of the Commonwealth. All makes pretty good sense. And then as far as temperatures are concerned, near to slightly above average. You can see a couple specks, maybe 2 or 3 degrees above average. I didn't have a chance to really dive in and crunch the numbers, but a notable lack of really cold days. I believe here in State College, the lowest high temperature was in the mid to upper 20s. So even that, for us to have gotten through winter, at least to this point, and it seems like there's not any real Arctic air in play, for us to have gotten that far without any temperatures in the teens as highs, it's pretty notable. We also avoided the really frigid Arctic mornings, which is also kind of crazy to me, given that most of the country was getting in on that, and somehow, some way we avoided it. Certainly no complaints from me. And then the final map I'll put up at this point, there's plenty more we could talk about. Most notably, the Central Pennsylvania local AMS and NWA chapter. We had a snowfall forecast contest going on. And in the fall, or I guess November, December timeframe, there were presentations regarding what the outlook was going to be. And it's safe to say that it's fallen short of the La Nina predictions with above average snowfall for the year. And I think maybe one person is still below the current or forecasted above the current seasonal snowfall amount. Everybody else eliminated if we're playing Price is Right rules. So it's been pretty interesting to navigate that. But anyways, this is basically season to date. So through March 1st, 2018 and 2019, 2019 and 2020, and then this year currently. And you can see certainly this year way more snow than what we've seen in years past. And it still just blows my mind. And I am, again, thankful for the fact that 2019, 2020 was quite snow deprived. Not a big snow fan, but 2018, 2019, fairly comparable in some areas, especially the lower highlands and the Northwest mountains. And then down in Southeast has gotten a little more snow action. One other thing to note, if you're interested in where these resources come from, I have attempted to put URLs on the slide along the way, and hopefully can, again, share some resources that we use fairly regularly. All right, so now let's talk about the weather forecast. And I write here that I'm an improving NWS meteorologist. I don't fancy myself to be a particularly great forecaster, and it's been interesting over the past couple of years that I've been doing these to see my comfort level with diving into the weeds and the nitty gritty grow a little bit as I become a better forecaster. So bear with me today. Let's go ahead and dive in. This was the webcam outside Beaver Stadium as of this morning at 9 a.m. So fairly ominous looking, actually, with this. Clouds hanging tough and fairly low. And then at the Penn State golf course, you can see a little raindrop here, a drop of liquid on the camera, but certainly starting to see some more green grass come in. And the ridges looking really, really nice with snow cover. Kind of looks like the top of a head with some really thin hair on it, I always think. As far as our radar and satellite show, a little bit old now, but you can see there's what remains of sort of an occluded front here that's really petering out as it moves across. And then on the right-hand side, unfortunately, the GOES geocolor imagery was not updated this morning, but you can see plenty of clouds streaming, high clouds along this occluded front with fairly strong upper level winds as well, which is going to be a weather maker for us as we head into the afternoon. We'll talk about that shortly. Now, surface analysis, I think, captures what's been going on pretty effectively. So there's a warm front kind of that's getting pinched off to the south, never quite made it up into our neck of the woods, really making it across the Allegheny Plateau, but plenty of moisture being funneled in over the course of the past 24 to 36 hours. Occluded front moving through shortly, and then a reinforcing area of Arctic air for March is not terribly cold Arctic air, but certainly colder than we've been. Will surge through this afternoon, fairly moisture deprived along that. Maybe an outside chance of some snow squalls, which we'll talk about here shortly. And as far as our 9 a.m. observed temperatures are concerned, man, Florida is the envy of the world. One of my former pastors, he lives down there, and been talking to him throughout this cold outbreak, and he's peachy keen, living the dream. Unfortunately, we're heading in the wrong direction as far as that's concerned, with some of this Arctic air surging into the Commonwealth overnight tonight and into the morning tomorrow. Current conditions, this is from the National Weather Service interface, called IRIS. And you can see here's the 24-hour snowfall amount. So generally, 1-inch totals were confined to along and south of I-80, some 2-inch spot amounts across the southern tier, Somerset County, Bedford County, etc. But generally an inch to inch and a half as expected in lower totals farther north. And the current wind gusts, according to the Keystone Mesonet page, I encourage you to check that out if you haven't. Some gustier winds starting to work their way in. I know at my place this morning, every once in a while you'll hear the leaves kind of flutter, and there's not many leaves, but I guess the branches sort of flutter. You can see a 30 mile-an-hour gust at Johnstown, 21 up here in Du Bois. So certainly the winds are gusting, and it's trash day today too in our neighborhood. So I have heard plenty of recycling bins and trash cans clinking all over the place. Another map that I really like that I think captures this well is the 24-hour temperature change map from the Weather Prediction Center, and spot the cold front with this one, huh? You can see plenty of cooling temperatures, and we'll expect by tomorrow morning we'll be firmly in the darker blues with temperatures quite a few degrees cooler than they are at this point right now. Now, as far as our surface map is concerned, just want to kind of step you through this for a big picture overview. Cold front off to the south and east as of 7 a.m. Some lingering light showers, as we talked about, they're clearing out. By 1 o'clock this afternoon, we're talking about dry conditions. We are seeing this this sort of wake secondary cold front slash Arctic front moving in, and the potential for a little bit more snow activity across, in particular, the northern tier. And we'll talk more briefly about the snow squall potential, but you can see a relatively tight gradient between deepening low pressure off the northeast coast and high pressure over Minnesota and Wisconsin, which will result in some fairly gusty winds as we head through this afternoon and evening. And then by the time we get into the day tomorrow, high pressure continuing to move in. Should be chilly tomorrow morning, but plenty of sunshine during the day. And it's going to be pretty difficult for us to find much in the way of moisture over the next 7 days after this little batch of rain moves it out this morning. No complaints here from me. So you can see how now it's Wednesday morning, and southern stream system looks to say, well, to our south, maybe just some high clouds across the southern tier. But aside from that, we're looking pretty good. The remiss as a Weather Service employee if I didn't show the current watches, warnings, and advisories map. You can see wind advisories have been hoisted for pretty much, I guess, 219 in east approximately, with gusty winds expected to ramp up this afternoon. Now, another thing to note, as far as maybe not so much here, but across the Commonwealth, river rises do continue. The combination of snowmelt and a couple inches of rain have caused rivers to continue to rise. And in fact, looks like the Youghiogheny River at confluence is expected, it's about to pass flood stage here imminently. And so minor impacts there, but that's really the only spot at this point that is expected to get to that warning criteria. And then elsewhere, cresting, maybe some bank full streams across some of the tributaries in southwestern and south central Pennsylvania. But again, not a whole heck of a lot that we need to worry about around here. Figured it'd be helpful to recap the rain as well, to just give us some context for what we're dealing with. This is an MRMS base reflectivity loop. I would be lying if I told you that the new radar page on the Weather Service website is super functional and exceptional. There's a reason why I'm going with this option instead. You can see round one came through yesterday afternoon, and then we had a brief lull in the afternoon with an additional accumulation of generally a quarter to a half an inch overnight. So a nice soaking rain. For me, it was nice to see it be rain as opposed to snow, although 35 and rain is maybe not the most pleasant weather conditions. To contextualize this, looking at the multi-radar, multi-sensor, 24-hour radar only QPE or quantitative precipitation estimate, you can see some of these darker greens here are 1.5 to 2 inches, probably a little bit overdone. But generally speaking, again, the delineation from I-80 on south with inch plus amounts and then lesser amounts farther north. And a new resource that's out there that I just want to kind of make you aware of as you're perhaps doing analysis. They've now implemented down at NSSL this multi-sensor pass 1 and pass 2, which is, it's got about a lag time of an hour or two. But it basically pulls in the ground truth, and they're doing some post-analysis to get a more accurate representation. So as I go back and forth between them, you can see some subtle differences, not a whole heck of a lot, but certainly something that may be useful for you. And this is all available on this operational product viewer page from NSSL and MRMS stuff. All right, so now we've looked back. Let's go ahead and now cast vision for what our week ahead looks like. I'm going to revisit this page at the end, but I am a huge disciple of the weather.gov/forecast points page. In my opinion, it's one of the best visualizations for a particular location, maybe even better than any weather app that you may have, not only because I'm biased and it's coming from a human as opposed to a computer, but because I just think the functionality is pretty nice. And so what I've got here, the hourly graphs for State College. And from a temperature standpoint, you can see we're going to bottom out tomorrow morning as that Arctic front moves its way through, wind chills dropping down into the single digits, so quite brisk. But then we'll moderate into Wednesday with temperatures pushing up likely into the mid to upper 40s, wind chills maybe a little bit lower than that. We'll drop down a little bit heading into the weekend as a couple moisture-deprived cold fronts move through. And then generally speaking, as we head into the second full week in March, moderating pattern is expected. We'll talk about that more shortly. The thing that I think I'm most excited about this forecast is check out the sky cover. We're talking about ample opportunities for plenty of sunshine, and that will help boost spirits as we transition from February. And January and February are always difficult because it's cloudy. You're not able to really get out and do much. Pandemic certainly does not help that, but I'm really excited about ample sunshine. Definitely want to get the sunglasses out. And then also, these probabilities of precipitation, these pops are extremely low. So dry, sunny, and seasonably cool for much of the week ahead, but good news. Another thing to note is here's highlighting that gusty wind threat, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But then it looks like it's going to be fairly breezy through much of the week ahead. Upper trough going to be affecting much of the Northeast, and so we're going to be breezy, cool, plenty of sunshine. Not maybe magnificent March weather, but the sunshine should be nice. And if you just bundle up a little bit, it'll be at least some opportunities to get out. And if you can handle the mud as everything has thawed, then you'll be in pretty good shape. Seeing some chats come in. I just want to quickly check those. Let's see. Rich, appreciate your commentary. Yep, glad that your rain gauge matches well. And Chris, thanks for plopping in the links. Super helpful. All right, without further ado, talking about the wind gusts here today. So here is, here are two plots. First off, I'll say the collaboration doesn't look particularly wonderful, and so that's perhaps a downside. But we have a bunch of statewide maps with NDFD, National Digital Forecast Database. So Weather Service official forecast for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania available here, weather.gov/CTP/grid images PA. And you can see that winds are going to get pretty gusty this afternoon, 40 to 50 miles an hour across much of the region, with sustained winds even potentially pushing 15 to 20 miles an hour this afternoon. So let's start talking about the why. What I've got here, if it will play through for me, is a loop of 850 millibar height and winds from, this is just the 3K NAM, and it's playing through relatively quickly. I apologize for that, but you can see that by 0Z this evening, kind of again along and east of US 219, we're seeing a ramp up in winds at the 850 millibar level with 50 to 55, even to 60 knots there. That combined with these pretty steep low-level lapse rates is going to allow mixing down to the surface of a lot of these winds. You can see in the wake of that, what we're really along and just ahead of that Arctic front, and in the wake of this morning's system, plenty of subsidence going to allow for ample mixing and the potential for some pretty gusty winds, as we're going to be able to potentially even tap up to say 850 or even 800 millibars with this system this afternoon. So I apologize, this is probably a little bit hard to see, but wanted to show a model sounding from approximately in-state college this afternoon at 0Z. And you can see pretty steep low-level lapse rates all the way up to, around 800 millibars or so. And these wind barbs you're seeing, you're tapping into 50, even potentially higher knot winds at that level. And so certainly by this evening, I would think that the trees will be blowing all over the place, and with temperatures, near or slightly below freezing, perhaps could even see a little bit more snowmelt. But the big thing is just going to be, if you have anything outside yet, certainly want to secure that. Going to be fairly gusty overnight tonight, and that wind advisory seems like a pretty good forecast. The next thing I want to talk about related to this, which we've kind of alluded to a little bit, is the snow squall potential for this evening. I'll preface it by saying here, I don't think we're going to get into the fun, fortunately or unfortunately, but still an interesting thing to talk about. I've got the from the SIPS page, the snow squall parameter for the NAM. So this is the 12Z NAM, and you're seeing snow squall parameter values pushing up, above 5 here in Northwest Pennsylvania for a little bit of time, and then it sort of peters out over Pennsylvania, but continues through much of New York. And that's certainly going to be the spot where we're most honed in on. And then the GFS has slightly lower values, but still, again, those similar foci in the Northwest Mountains and then up into New York. So what I've shown here is a loop from the href, and you can see this is the HER, what its representation is. And so really the focus is going to be mostly over New York. You can see some of these taller, bigger squalls. The focus looks to be there, but with this particular model, you can see maybe some sort of west to east oriented band will make its way through far northeastern Pennsylvania, perhaps making it down to I-80. That may be more of a Binghamton focus, but certainly something we're going to be keeping an eye on. And let me just bop over to the HREF page quickly if this will cooperate with me. Computer isn't seeming to want to do much. Let me just pull it up on a different screen. Thanks for bearing with me. All right, so looking at the member viewers, this is the 12Z HREF, and I'm going to pull up the northeast view, got the member viewer up. And so this is the HER again that I was showing you. So we're talking about probably 22 to 0 or 1Z. So sort of a dinner time type of a situation. The NSSL, the ARW, the NMMB, NIM-NEST all show fairly similar solutions, with a majority of the concern being up across much of New York, but could also see a couple stray, again, Arctic front type snow squalls that are more zonally oriented, move across some of the major interstates through this evening. So certainly something we're going to be keeping an eye on. Nothing to write home about, or certainly no need to say issue a snow squall watch if that was such a thing for our area, but something we'll be monitoring nonetheless. There's a snow squall potential. Let's now talk about midweek. Want to also show a couple resources that we have started using at the Weather Service, of more of a probabilistic view. Mixed opinions even within the Weather Service on the utility of these, but figured it'd be worth showing. These are internal, so unfortunately can't share the link, and even if I could, you couldn't access it without a government email. But this is the high temperature range forecast for Wednesday. And so you can see here for most of the area, we're still forecasting, or the MBM, I guess, is still expecting a mean value below 50, but fairly wide ranges. But you can see bust potential is certainly more likely on the lower end of this. Put another way, this is the probabilities of exceedance. So this is the chance of a high temp 50 degrees Fahrenheit or above, according to the NBM. Again, looks like Middletown's got a pretty good shot. We're not quite there yet, but certainly could get to that place. We'll see the next couple of days. I know last week's sort of heat wave, we were forecasting something maybe like 49 or so a couple days before, and that's the day we ended up hitting 59, I believe. So certainly we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Cloud cover could hinder our high temperatures depending on how far north those higher clouds stream in from the south. Now, as far as the next 7 days are concerned, I like this map as well. Nice and dry, not a whole lot going on, as I mentioned, plenty of sunshine, and so some good news there. And then as we look at our surface map, just going into the extended, this is now Thursday morning. So reinforcing shot of colder air coming in after that warm surge on Wednesday. No precipitation with this thing at this point, but you're going to be able to see high pressure off to the north, northerly winds going to be cooling us down. We'll sort of have a course correction there. High pressure then begins to move its way in again on Saturday and firmly in place over us on Sunday. So expect plenty of sunshine through the weekend. And then as this high pressure finally moves its way off to our east, it appears that we are going to be climbing for a good part of the next week. So shout out to our good friend, Fred Gadomski. We will now peer into the misty distant future and indicate that, hey, warmth does await, at least eventually. So just wanted to look at temperature outlook with a couple of our ensemble resources. So the GEFS, you can see here what the 9th is next Tuesday. After we peak on Wednesday, we'll drop back down through Friday, and then we start climbing on through the weekend, potentially even, ensemble mean being 50 degrees by next Monday. And then the trend does seem to be up beyond that. Pretty nice resource here. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but this is certainly a page that I would reference for accessing European ensemble data for free for particular locations. I came across this at some point. I'm not exactly sure when, but this plots all of the European ensemble members for State College. And this is basically the temperature forecast from Sunday all the way through next week. and you can see a notable upward trend. In fact, I'm intrigued by the fact that 60 degrees Fahrenheit does come into play, perhaps Wednesday, Thursday. Again, we're pretty far out. I'm not certainly saying bet the farm on this, but again, as an optimist and somebody who loves mowing grass, I'm excited for things to start warming up and us trending in the right direction. And then the last thing I'll show, the National Blend of Models. Again, this is another internal page, but this is showing you box and whiskers plots of maximum temperature through the next, 10 days or so. And this line here indicates the probability of temperatures greater than or equal to 50 degrees. So you can see fairly low chance, but non-zero chance on Wednesday. Then we'll cool off again, and then we head out into the weekend with a warming trend. And I guess the thing that a lot of people are saying right now is to the moon. So I feel like maybe that's appropriate. We got the rocket here. We can just keep our temperatures rising similarly to how the stocks have been rising. Well, maybe not so much of late, but certainly for a couple week period there. Now, this model guidance we've shown is backed up well by the CPC outlooks, or perhaps support for these CPC outlooks with above normal temperatures favored as we head into next week. And then beyond that, even better chance, which again matches up with what we're talking about, warmer weather in store. And then even for March, this was issued a couple weeks ago, so I'm expecting an update to come soon, but expecting again above normal temperatures for majority of March. As far as precipitation is concerned, again, we talked about fairly moisture deprived for the next 7 days or so. So a low chances, or a better chance of below average precipitation. And then perhaps as we get into mid-March, things will start tilting a little bit, maybe bringing back some moisture into our neck of the woods. I was hoping this would update. It doesn't look like it really has. This is a 16-day NAIFS precipitation forecast. I think this is still reflecting some of the precipitation from yesterday. But do certainly store this in your mind. Looks like it's going to stay fairly dry over the course of the next couple weeks. All right, so hope you guys are bearing with me. Looks like we still got a little bit of time. I'm going to try to bang through these. Again, just want to communicate, now that I have a chance and a captive audience, what some of the new resources that we have available to us are at the Weather Service. We spent a lot of time trying to get our forecast information more accessible, looking better, so that people actually will come to us for the resources. So first things first, I'm really excited about this. I sort of took a template from the Charleston, West Virginia office and modified it for our purposes. This is our briefing page. So weather.gov/CTP/briefing. When you go to that, it is designed to be a one-stop shop for all your weather forecast information. So we'll navigate to that in just 1 second. In fact, I'm going to pull it up right now. And better yet, let me go to the State College homepage and show you where you can access it if you don't feel like saving the bookmark. My computer is not wanting to cooperate this morning. It knows it's a Monday morning. All right, so come to our page, scroll down to the bottom, Weather Hazards Briefing. If you click on that, that's going to take you to the briefing page. So there are a myriad of tabs with all sorts of different information on here. Current weather, you can look and see watch warning advisory map for both the CWA and the entire country. The high quality, incredibly useful radar loops from around the Commonwealth, and then a variety of maps. Rainfall flooding tab has observed precipitation. Looks like perhaps that's a little bit outdated, maybe hasn't been updated yet. But as you scroll down, you can see basically precipitation amounts broken down. This might be helpful. Hey, we got a storm coming. How much are you expecting before we actually publish maybe a storm total map? And then all the excessive rainfall outlook graphics along with WPC stuff. And then if you're really interested in hydro, this is kind of a nice resource. We've got this table down here that updates all the time. And you can kind of scroll over and see visually when are we expecting to get near flood stage or to flood stage, and then can certainly go forward there. And now we see Confluence has surpassed flood stage with some of the latest guidance. So anyways, encourage you to check that out. There's a lot of nice resources on there. While we're at it, going to check out the temps and wind. Sometimes these graphics don't load at first glance. You got to click on it a little bit more. But looking at the maximum wind gust, you can see there, hey, there's our winds. Tomorrow, still relatively windy, especially overnight. but then definitely tapering off by the time we get into the day on Wednesday. But anyways, briefing, weather.gov/CTP/briefing. Certainly encourage you to check that out. Next thing, I mentioned to you, I'm a big fan of this. This is the weather.gov/forecast points page. Now, there's a lot of plug and play that can happen with this, but when you pull it up and you plug in your lat long or your location, there's going to be a variety of different resources. So first is the forecast display. Now, this does kind of look like a smattering of color that's sort of complicated to deal with right now. I get that, but at least gives you a visualization. Okay, going to be pretty windy. If it's lighting up, in some of these lower areas, it's probably a good sign that there's something significant happening. I don't particularly love this, but it's at least there for you. There's also an hourly forecast display that you can click through, kind of like your weather app might have, where you have wind direction, you've got wind speed, temperature, sky cover, etc. That I think is pretty resourceful. And then my favorite part is this forecast display with the hourly graphs. And in fact, I will, in the chat, I'll type in a URL that just shows this and doesn't have all the stuff at the top, that you could even recommend to your friends. Hey, use this as your weather app, because there's a lot of great visualization tools, and put a bookmark on your home screen. So big fan of weather.gov/forecast points. The other thing that maybe this is of interest to you, I'm not totally sure, is weather.gov/CTP/DSS. So these are county level forecasts. And when you go to this page, you can either click on a particular county or scroll down to say Center County. And this is centered on State College. And for each day between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., it's going to give you an hourly forecast with color coding based on a variety of threat levels, which seemed to work pretty well. We spun this up for our COVID-19 test sites across the Commonwealth, and certainly would encourage you to test it out. It's a nice tool. Maybe if you're having an outdoor activity or something and just want to keep an eye on, okay, when are the hazards going to be present? Feel free to check that out. And then finally, our weather story page. Some of you guys may be familiar with this, weather.gov/CTP/weather story, or just at the bottom of weather.gov/CTP. We update this at least once per day to reflect the current conditions. And this is a graphic from last night, in fact. So another good resource that we try to put out there along the way. And the final self-promotion, we actually have not officially rolled these out yet. We're going to be doing so likely tonight. In fact, they are posted on our webpage. Here's a suite of basic Skywarn talks. So if you're interested in getting a refresher, yikes, something just blew over. Sorry for getting spooked there. If you're looking for a refresher, we have done some updating to that over the course of the past couple of years. Certainly encourage you to get on weather.gov/CTP/spotter talks. And you can register. They will be held through GoToWebinar over the course of the next month or so. And with that, I think I'll wrap up. I want to finish out. Anybody that follows me on Twitter or Facebook has certainly seen this. I love mowing grass. I love building culture. And I think this is a good reference for all of us. Culture improvement is like growing grass, not killing weeds. A healthy lawn will eliminate the room for weeds to grow. So be the sunshine today. Really enjoyed this. And note that if you aren't aware, we have an Instagram account now over at the Weather Service. So certainly give us a follow there. And appreciate you all joining today. Hopefully you guys got a good laugh out of me just freaking out as something hit my house. I have no idea what it was, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, John. Several folks have been taking advantage of the chat over the last 40-ish minutes. If you do have any questions, make sure to direct them to all panelists and attendees if you'd like all of us or all the folks attending to see your question as well. John, it looks like you've got 2 questions pending from Marissa and Tyler.
Okay, yep. So I see Severe Weather Awareness Week this year. Let me actually pull up. Let's see, it's the last week in March, but let me pull up the web page. I swore there was, let's see, severe. So there's a Weather Service calendar. Weather.gov/safety. /events_calendar. In fact, I can put that in the chat. All panelists and attendees. And so for Pennsylvania, Severe Weather Awareness Week. Flood is the end of March. My apologies. Severe Weather Awareness Week, April 19th through 23rd. And we will be doing full social media blast collaborated with PEMA this year. And we're likely also going to do some sort of Facebook Live and or GoToWebinar for preparedness information. We haven't done that in the past. So certainly keep an eye on that. Regarding, let's see, the question from Tyler. He says, with regards to the NWS communication mission to the public, like you mentioned, and with regards to the thought of moving the NHC's hurricane season earlier, do you think this is simply arbitrary, or do you think this would be a good move? Good question, Tyler. So I think there is an arbitrary nature to it because fundamentally, I mean, first off, Mother Nature doesn't really care. But in recent years, it's been fairly common for storms to occur before June 1st. And I think one of the advantages from a communication standpoint is if people hear that hurricane season is June 1st to November 30th, they may likely think, oh, I can hold off. I don't need to prepare yet. So even bumping it up a little bit, given that the climatology of the recent events support it, I think it presumably is a good move. I don't see the harm in it necessarily because of the propensity for hurricanes or tropical systems to develop a little bit sooner. And those folks on AHC are brilliant people. Had the pleasure of interacting with them for the Hurricane Awareness Tour a couple of years ago. So certainly, fully trust their direction, and we'll see what the World Meteorological Organization decides on here. I don't know how soon that vote's coming, but I thought it was relatively soon. So it'll be an interesting conversation for sure.
I believe the vote is happening in the next 2 weeks. I remember running across that on Twitter.
Okay. Yep. Twitter is a great source for weather information. So Marissa says, I hope your Christmas cow didn't fly into your house. I do have it's maybe not quite life size, but like 3/4 size light up cow that is outside for Christmas. It's in my basement now, so certainly no worries about that. Another thing that I'll just reference, and I'll probably retweet it. Marissa sent me a link to there's a Twitter account about cows. It's like All Things Cows or something, and they posted a tweet that was a model of the aerodynamics of a cow with like all the different vectors and the airflow around it. So forgot to incorporate that in the last minute push, but here we are.
All right. Well, we're running short on time, so we have about enough time for maybe one more question. And let me check the Q&A. I have not been keeping an eye on the Q&A. There is nothing in the Q&A. All right. We'll give it about another 30 or 45 seconds here. Let somebody furiously type out a question really quickly before we depart here.
One last thought. I guess Rob commented in here. There is a publicly available NBM 1D viewer. So I wasn't sure if that was password protected, but certainly check that out. If you have any questions about any of these links, let me know. Happy to share them with you. But Rob, thanks for pointing that out.
All right. Well, I am not seeing any additional messages. John, thanks again for giving this week's weather briefing.
Thanks a lot. It was fun, everybody. Notice I didn't mention Ohio State for a single time, but I have to show it in. I couldn't get through without mentioning Ohio State. Thanks, everybody. Good to see everyone. Well, good to be seen by everyone. Unfortunately, I can't see you guys, but be in touch and have a good spring.
All right. Thanks again, John. This weather briefing and all other weather briefings will be archived on the Campus Weather Service YouTube page at youtube.com/Campus Weather Service. And I look forward to having all of you join us next Monday, the 8th. We will have Charles Ross, also from NWS State College, joining us for next week's weather briefing. That'll be the same time, same place, 10:15 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody.